In this video, we are going to explore something that, sadly, is quite controversial. Our own car industry. Something that I've thought about for many years, and you probably have as well. How could the British motor industry return as it once was? In this video, I'd like to explore how Rover, Triumph and Austin could be relaunched to take on the world once more. Hello everybody and welcome to this video. If you're not subscribed, please make sure to do so. Like the video and drop a comment below on what you would do. Do you agree with me? Do you think this is a complete pipe dream? I'd just like to know. I'm fresh off of working on the SD1 and working on the Cortina and the MX-5 and the Fiat and the 75. So I'm absolutely frazzled, but it doesn't matter because that's what this is all about. I wasn't frazzled when I wrote this though, so I recorded this, only this bit. So don't worry about that. Now, let me know your opinion on this. Let me know what you would do to resurrect the British car industry. And without further delay, let's get into the video. But first, a bit of context in the form of an abridged timeline of its decline. The British motor industry was once the envy of the world, with marques like Jaguar, Austin, Morris, Rover, MG, Alvis and Hillman, just to name a few. It came out of the Second World War with the Land Rover, the car that set the template for utility vehicles for the next 100 years. Our industry was accredited with many firsts as well, like in 1910 the first production car with four-wheel brakes by Scottish manufacturer Argyll. From the late 1940s to the late 1960s the industry was riding high, with the Jaguar XK120 becoming the fastest car in the world in 1948, to the introduction of the gorgeous E-Type in 1961, and one of the best sports saloons ever made being launched 2 years later in 1963, the Rover P6. But something went wrong. In late 1968, British Leyland was formed, nationalising the car industry, and the rest is history. Poor management, poor industrial relations, marketing and internal politics made this behemoth corporation too big to control, but not too big to fail. One of the quotes that really does tell the story of industrial relations in British Leyland and how efficient of a machine it was, it goes like this. Management would order 5,000 left-hand wings but forget to order the other side, and we'd be expected to sort that out. That's from a worker at the Speak Factory in the BBC's broadcast at the time during the 17-week-long crisis. Now, if that's not telling, I don't know what is. In the 1980s, a now private car industry was strangled by the government, who chose to focus more on services than material goods, effectively abandoning the industrial sector, which included the car industry, leading to its further decline. As mentioned earlier, we had many firsts, but not all of these were positive. When in 1989 we became the first major car producing country to relinquish our domestically owned independent national champion car maker. This, of course, was Jaguar. Austin Rover, now renamed Rover Group, was then sold to BMW in 1994. Rover Group then went on under BMW ownership to create the Rover 75, their real last chance saloon. But BMW had other ideas when the chairman of BMW at the time decided to lampoon the Rover 75 in the press, leading to poor sales and, after that, the sale of Rover. Rover Group was then split up, with Land Rover going to Ford and Mini staying with BMW. Hope was revived at the turn of the millennia, with the Phoenix Falls purchase of the remnants of BMW's dismembered Rover Group to form MG Rover, but without the development arm at Gaydon, limited funds and a country full of people who weren't willing to forget the 70s build quality disasters, 90s down market trend of the Rover name, there wasn't much that could be done to save the company, with the last wholly British owned car manufacturer calling in the administrators on a bleak day in April 2005. A battered and scarred MG Rover was then ripped apart once more, with its assets sold to a Chinese car giant. But it's not all bad news. You see, SAIC did purchase the rights to MG, but thankfully the Rover name, along with Triumph and Austin, was still owned by BMW, who weren't ready to give up the rights to the name just yet. SAIC tried to purchase the Rover name, but BMW sold it to Ford with Jaguar Land Rover, which led to the Rover in its native tongue, which is almost a caricature of what Rover once stood for. That means Rover, Triumph and Austin are still sitting dormant today. So what does this mean? I believe they've been left in this state as there would be too much cost involved to relaunch these marques and too much risk for Jaguar, which Rover would probably directly compete with. In an ideal world where I had the money, backing and know-how, this is what I'd do to relaunch. And just to mention, I'm not an expert. I do have some experience in business, but I'm just a dude that really likes cars. I would relaunch the brands like this. I would do it in a three-pronged approach. Rover, the luxury brand, Triumph would be for sports cars, relaunching the TR series, and Austin would be for the everyday brand of volume cars. For powertrains, I wouldn't go solely electric on the luxury or mid-tier cars. Rover would be the luxury marque it once was back in the late 1950s to late 60s, and would not be put on any down-market cars to keep its prestige, which was one of the problems with the original iteration of Rover back in the 70s to the 90s. As far as cars are concerned, I'd create a Rover SD1 for the 21st century with a hybrid powertrain because EVs simply aren't there yet in terms of range and safety. I'd rather not end up with a series of fires as well, especially with what's already attributed to the Rover SD1's brand. This new SD1 would then include a hydrogen-powered drivetrain in the second year of its production. Triumph would be a relaunch of the TR series of cars, a much loved and much valued series of cars in British motoring history. These would be fully combustion engine cars, laws permitting, but skipping the 9 on the TR series. Of course, you've got the TR7 and TR8. This would be the TRX or TR10. There would be an option, of course, to create an EV once the technology advances further, or a hydrogen-powered model depending on the technology at the time. Austin would be the volume car manufacturer and probably the most critical, capitalising on the retro styling that is so in fashion today, echoing the volume and specifications of today's MGs, but mimicking the Honda E in terms of styling, but not straying away from the classic design of the A30. The A30 would be electric and go head-to-head with the 500e. With it being a full EV though, it would be safer to go with a smaller capacity battery and limit it to primarily city driving. But in an ideal world, of course, this would be internal combustion or hydrogen powered. Next, I'd relaunch the A35 as a crossover / large hatchback to go head-to-head against the sales success that is the MG ZS EV. This car, of course, would be probably the biggest seller. Logistics-wise and making the cars, this is where it gets hard and it gets very tricky. With Longbridge gone and all the other sites owned and operated by other manufacturers, a new site would need to be built, which would be the biggest investment as it would need a home as well. So where would you build it and what would you build? The only hope really for a quick and easy solution would be to either build a new factory, of course, or wait for BMW to stop moaning to the government for money to keep the Oxford Mini plant open. In my head though, the Mini's production is in the UK and that's where it should stay. So a new plant is the only option, as the job losses and industry losses would be catastrophic if the Oxford plant closed. So there you have it, a car enthusiast take on how I'd relaunch Rover, Triumph and Austin in the UK. Unfortunately, there is no easy fix, as mentioned earlier. It is a challenge, but it can happen. It's not a question of if, just when. As mentioned earlier, let me know how you'd relaunch these companies. If you have any ideas, drop a comment below. This is a really interesting topic and a really, really cool what-if situation, but of course it would need significant resources. And the set of criteria needed, it would need to be met, but at present it's just not possible. This is a bit of a different video from the normal one, so I hope you guys like it. Again, it's just something really, really interesting to explore, because, you know, I always find myself thinking, where would I go from the Rover 75? Now, of course, you know, Jaguar still exists, Land Rover still exists. You've got, you know, McLaren is British owned, Noble, I believe, is British owned. You've got Morgan as well, but these aren't volume car. Well, Jaguar is and Land Rover is, but they're not, you know, the same sort of volume as Rover and MG were back in the day. Now, this of course is just one of those things that I've just always wanted to go over. I've always wanted to sort of try to put it together and go, you know, to you guys, here it is, and that's what I've done with this video. It's a really, really, really cool topic. Again, the British motor industry would probably never be at the capacity it used to be, because there's simply just too much too much competition, and there isn't enough cheap labour. And to be honest with you, you wouldn't want cheap labour, because, well, the standards of living would be less, etc., etc., etc. Of course, that would then result in a poorer quality car, all that stuff. With British Leyland, Austin Rover, MG Rover, Rover Group, that's something I'd like to cover in a bigger video, because there's just so much there to cover. I mean, you'd have to do massive videos on that. You could never condense one of those videos, one of those companies, into 20 minutes, because it just wouldn't work. 20 minutes, half an hour, it just wouldn't work. So I just thought I'd give you a bit of an abridged take on it. In my head, would this be a success? Yes, I think it would, but you would need the correct market conditions, you would need the correct brand appeal, so you'd need to, that again is market conditions, you would need to make, you would need to carve out Rover, Triumph and Austin's brand in the mind's eye of the masses. And unfortunately, you would have to use social media to do that. Again, social media is not a bad thing or a good thing. It's a double-edged sword, but it would take a lot of time and money and resources just to pull all that off. And I just think it's just a fascinating thing to cover. So that's about it really for this video. It might be a bit of a short one, but there's not too much I can include in this without giving too much away, but I think it's a fascinating thing to cover, and I'd like to hear what you guys have to say as well, because it's one of those topics that is, one, a little bit divisive, unfortunately, and two, and probably the most important one, extremely interesting, because it's something that we were once on top of the world for, and now, unfortunately, because of several key errors, mistakes, and other things, including, of course, you've got, well, we won't get into that in this one because we can't cover that yet. But I'd love to cover this in a great more detail, and let me know if you'd like me to do that. So, without further waffling on this and actually getting my words out, thank you for watching. Keep watching. Remember to subscribe for more of this, and I'll see you guys in the next one.